Welcome back to Trust All Truth, and today I come with a topic that I've mentioned in a few of the previous videos I've made, and that is going to be about consent. You're going to be about influence, consent and influence, right? So it entails inside within the Choice series, and I make these general statements that we are at all times making decisions, and those decisions will affect us, right, first, and then they will have, effects upon other people, depending on what we're making the decision over. So when we make these decisions, every decision that we are choosing to make, that we have contemplatable, authority over, that is something that we are consenting to do, something that we are allowing to happen, therefore is consensual. Consensual can be verbal or non-verbal. And people will try to tell you, in certain circumstances, people will try to say consent is only verbal, which we live in a society where we are able to, see cues, non-verbal cues, and act accordingly. And the ignorance of those, or the intentional non-use of them or non-acknowledgement of them, does not conclude that it is not possible or does not exist. It's just that you personally choose not to use them, which is your prerogative. That is your choice. You're choosing to not study or listen to or observe or look for non-verbal consent to some degree or another. All right? And the same people that say these things will also, still be nodding their head, or they'll say, I hate things, I wish I didn't have to do these things, right? But your consent is your action, your physical action thereafter, right? Consent is something that you want to do, and that want, right, is influenced. So all of our actions that we ever make are influenced. So if you listened or read, if I wrote it out, maybe not, if there's subtitles, if you listen to my talk about relationships, you know that all these things, anything in reference to another thing, is a relationship. So if we talk about influence, influence is a relationship of something done on something to become, right? On something that has happened upon something that will happen. The things you have been influenced by create options for what you can do in the future, and what you will consent to do in the future, and the things that are available to your disposal, at your discretion. You can be either heavily influenced or minimally influenced by anything at any time. Beautiful man on a bicycle. So influence can be non-physical, physical, right? Non-physical or physical. So a physical influence could either be a drug, a person, an animal, a situation, an event, a multitude of things. Non-physical could be an emotion, someone else's emotion, a thought, someone's words that you've read, words that you've heard, certain sounds that are not words, certain art, certain music, animals even then, like anything you can observe, like physically and non-physical, is something physically that is, I'm talking about, that is making a contact with you. So due to these influences, and what we choose to act upon within influence, it leaves us vulnerable, right? Sometimes, if we have not contemplated thoroughly the result of our actions because of we necessarily don't see all the hardships that someone has gone through because of choices they've made, right? But we see their success, right? And we want to, copy that. This is definitely a home for ants, and they're about to be crawling all over me. I should have left that where it was. That's unfortunate, but I mean, it's their home, not mine. I came and interrupted. My influence on them is little to none. They're going about their business. I'm not threatening them. None of them have been harmed thus far, and it looks like they're hollowing this cut of a tree up that's been so gently spliced by somebody with a chainsaw. So our influences and the choices we make because of influences. Right? Those are completely, we are responsible for those things. Someone shot, there's a bee that just came right in front of my body, and it stayed there for a second, and I was disturbed for a second there. But I realized I'm a guest. I'm a guest here. I'm a guest. The things that we do by influence, no matter the context over which things influence us, because things can be a heavy influence. Like parents to children are the most instrumental or the most influential persons in that of a child, of a baby, or whoever's taking care of the child in its infancy, right? So the most influential things around it are the people that take care of it. Growing up, it will more likely than not mimic those things as a way to survive. It will go on to find its own things to do, make different decisions that will open up different opportunities. But influenced by the decisions made for them previously, they will more likely to make decisions along the lines of those things that are consistent with something that they're experienced with, something they're comfortable with, something that they're knowledgeable of. It's quite difficult to break out of being influenced so very much, or consensually influenced and making ideas in line with that influence, right? Because you can have an influence and not apply it, right? So you can listen to classical music, and you can listen to jazz, right? And you can listen to heavy metal. But sure, the notes are influenced in terms of signatures and timing. Which one is more influenced by the other, right? We can say that jazz is more observably similar to classical music than classical music is similar to heavy metal. There's some very, very nice, math rock that is in line with could be more similar to jazz, right? Or have connection with classical music. But those are delineations that we make, and we separate those things because we acknowledge the similarity of music, and then what makes it different, right? So at some point, the influence is that something has is unsubstantial. So to give credit to it is to give credit that because this existed beforehand, I now have the opportunity to do this. So that's certainly an influence. Whether it's not direct, it's an indirect influence, which is what a lot which is what a lot of subjective things are. And subjective ideas people have are indirect opinions or indirect influences, or they have the capacity to have direct influence, but usually from an indirect standpoint, right? And that was a weird phrasing, but I hope you get what I'm saying through there. I didn't have anything written down for this one in particular. I just know I've been talking about it. I was late, so I just came out and I started speaking. We've got these decisions that we make under the influence of things, right? Whether if it be a drug, then we consented, or if we consented to use the drug in the first place, we are now under the influence of something. Whether or not we consented to being under the influence of the drug, right? If we are still actionably in control of our bodies after we're under the influence of something, we are still making decisions that we still making decisions that will affect us and other people and the future of our life. So with that in mind, it's very important to be aware of the things that have the opportunity to influence your mind. So if something is done to you unconsensually, that there's no hesitation in you gaining that control back, right? And there's no hesitation in you influence your. So there's no hesitation in you getting the influence of those actions into a purely positive, framing. So that you would then go forward in your actions during. So if you are affected by something, affected by a trauma that you had due to something non-consensual, right? You are now consenting to the influence of that trauma to negatively affect your life for the future. If that is what if that's what's served. No, you're fine. You're just fine, man. I'm in the middle of a trail. It's your path. If that is in fact what you are doing with that trauma, if you are using it as a crutch of some sort to give yourself an excuse to behave a certain way, to keep yourself weak, so there's people that will support you, or and these things are done sometimes subliminally or unconsciously, but I'm pretty certain that most people understand that the trauma that they realize that they've suffered is having an effect on them, right? And if that trauma effect is presenting itself non-physically on a daily basis, and it's something that is affecting your life when it could be inconsequential to continue to think about it or to not think about it, where it would be actually better for you to let that have been and you progress forward. If you continue to let this thing be a consistent influence over your mindset, then you're never going to progress as much as you figure you would and heal as much as. So a part of influence and part of consent could mean you could be influenced by something or someone being dishonest, and you could willfully consent to these things through a pretense that is invalidated through further research. It's that person's fault for putting a deception towards you or offering you a deception. It is your choice to accept it. So this is a cut into the last talk. I'm probably going to put it in, or no, I'm probably just going to put it in. So after I made the first part of the video, I just so happened to, there happened to be a couple videos and articles that popped up about the matter. And some individuals were saying that coercion is not consent. If you ask something over and over and over and over again, and then someone finally gives in into what you want, right, that is force, and that's not consensual. And I go back to the statement and say, someone over and over again keeps asking, non-physical, and you finally give in. You give in. The people are consistently, and adults, right, they are trying to, with this new rights of people's autonomy and trying to not be able to be violated, you're making excuses for yourself, overbearingly making excuses for yourself and trying to create new positions to be victimized by and fall and create yourself as a victim in more scenarios than substantiated or truthful. And that's something I spoke about. Lying to yourself is one thing, but bringing that lie out and the deception I was talking about to try to sway someone else's perception of a scenario that you were involved in, to see you as a victim more so than you were, to lessen your role in a certain act than what you really played, and try to create someone as more of a perpetrator than they are. This is in no way a defense of certain actions that do take place. Forcible action upon someone that did not consent to a forcible action, which forcible actions can be consented to as well. But if a forcible action was not consented to and it was not in the best interest, logically, rationally, and morally concerned, if that forcible action was not in the best interest of whom that forcible action was forced upon or in control of, that person is objectively in the wrong, and that won't change. That's the truth of the matter. Now, the way the actions are perceived thereafter from people that weren't witnesses to the original act, the truth matters still, and the truth it still holds. To have a position about something, have an unmovable position about something that you want a witness to is concerning for the world, and it's especially seen as a stance for many people today. And it's not a good thing at all, because the people with status of authority are convincing or trying to are influencing others to believe that the influence, something that they were influenced by and then consented in an act with was non-consensual. They try to rationalize consensuality. They try to re-rationalize, and successfully with influencing people to have a stance on an event that they were more control of than they want responsibility. Now, this in no way is saying that certain influences are morally wrong. Certain influences are, absolutely. And the maturity of the individual being influenced, this goes into deception as well, because deception is an influence. But I'll go specifically into that later. The maturity of the person, animal or human or plant, having something influenced upon it, the maturity of it will determine its vulnerability or want or willingness to follow that and that's something I believe I stated before in the video. That's the thing that we can separate. The maturity of the object of influence, the maturity of the thing influencing, and the intention of the thing influencing, the intention of the influence itself. So those things all have to be separated. So if the intention of the influence is to cause harm to the thing it's influencing, that is always wrong if it's not done in a moral, if it's not in self-defense. Vindictiveness is not self-defense. Revenge is not self-defense. Vigilantism, I don't know how to conjugate that. Vigilantisness, I don't know, is not self-defense. It's irritating, quite frankly. A lot of our youth is being exposed to the idea of take less responsibility for something that you were influenced to do. I wouldn't say take less responsibility. I say learn and grow from that experience. Learn and grow. Know what to avoid for the next time, but understand what your responsibility is. I mean, if you're taking more responsibility than necessary, absolutely take less responsibility. But don't take none. If you were not forced to do something, you chose to do something. And the results thereafter are partially your fault. You are partially responsible for. Nothing you were forced to do is your fault. Something you consented in doing and was influenced to do is at least partially your fault. Because these things, there can be influence and force involved with each other and commingling in the same event. You must separate each of those actions. And it's not just, it's the physical state of consensuality. The only thing that consent is needed for is something you are physically capable of rejecting if that was your desire too. So any things that do not require your rejection for them not to be put upon from a logical and rational perspective of another person, something that you could reasonably something that could cause a reasonable harm to you in this scenario, and you are able to reject it, and that rejection is reject, right? So if someone is now in control of, those things are the things that we have no responsibility in. Those events only. The non-physical and the influence, actions and thoughts, ideas in which we hold and operate and control are no one else's responsibility past a certain age of accountability. So once we are aware of situations, of certain situations, particular situations, once we are aware of yes and no, right and wrong, which comes through time, maturity, we are solely responsible for our act. With someone else having a necessary influence over that because of accountability that they have for you, that for the things that you are missing. I believe in a different, in our earliest status of autonomy and capability and understanding than most people do. Because of my personal lived experience, I understand that to be wholly, completely truthful, honest, not just truthful and honest for myself, but applicable to everyone else, because it is natural, because it's the physical state of world. It's a law of life that cannot be changed. It can only be manipulated. The status of it cannot change searching. The usable material in which are available, there are a finite amount of options that are available. However, these finite options will be revealed more and more, and it will seem infinite, that it is unpredictable, but they are quite predictable. We can be certain in what is possible, in the possibility of possibility, and that's what I say. Sometimes it's a weird thing, and I'll come back in the next one. But yes, just to leave it off, any influence is not force. Any control is force. Anything that one does that they had an option to do or not to do, and they did or didn't do, that action of doing or not, or rejection of doing, is consensual at all points in time. And that is the episode for today. I will be going into an episode of deception in the future. Join me, as like I said. I'm writing, I'm making videos, I'm trying to figure out some ways to get around the world and experience more so I understand more and know more. I've been having wonderful fellowship for the past few weeks of complete and other exposure, just learning everything in the environment. I'm going to make my way and do better, but we will see. We're going to see where it leads. Thank you all for listening and thinking. Be blessed, stay blessed. I'll see you all in the next one. Trust all truth.